And welcome to another installment of Civic Affairs with your hosts, as always, Alex Parr and Andy Martens. Now, Andy, are you ready for the show? It's going to be action-packed.
Oh, it is.
It could very arguably be our highest profile show, as joining us right here beside us is the mayor of Sault Ste. Marie, Cristian Provenzano. So I got to ask you, how are you doing today, Cristian?
Very well. I want to start by thanking both of you, Andy and Alex, for having me on. And I want to compliment the crew here. I'm super impressed with the quality of your studios, and I think it's really great to see a local business really working this hard to provide local news and local coverage to the community.
And we thank you for helping us be a part of that too, because without you, we wouldn't have the show today.
Thank you,
Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's the first of many interviews.
So let's get started off with the hard-pressed questions. They're not so hard-pressed.
Sure.
One really cool initiative that I saw you take part of, I did a little news story on it, so I was a little familiar, the Every Breakfast Counts initiative. Now, I think you may do a better job of explaining it, as you were right there at the forefront of it. So do you want to tell the viewers at home maybe a little bit about what it is about and what it's trying to help?
Sure. Love the opportunity to do that. So I have great staff at City Hall. I have two people that work with me on a daily basis, Lisa and Jordan, and the three of us were talking about what we can do in the community, what we can do that would be special, and maybe what we can do to fill a need. And we were all focused on what we can do for kids. And so it came to our attention, you know, obviously over the course of my mayoralty, that there's a lot of children that that require or that dependent upon or really need that first meal of the day. They get that at school. And we asked the question, well, what happens when school's out? Right. And then we got the response, well, we're not, you know, quite sure what happens then, but a lot of the kids that rely on the breakfast program are probably going without breakfast. And so we said, well, can we fix that? Where's the gap? And what we got back was, look, we have the infrastructure, we have the people, well, we need the money to buy the food. And I said, you know what? We can help with that. So the mayor's office put together this program called Every Breakfast Counts. We're working with the United Way, Algoma Family Services, and our DSAB. And what we're going to do is we're going to buy enough breakfast food to be able to help all the kids in the community that might need that help throughout the course of the summer. And so what we did is we set out to raise $25,000 by the end of this month, so that we had the resources in place to buy the food in July and August. And I can tell you that we are well on our way, and the program is underway. And our partners are putting together the meal plans, and we're confident we're going to hit our fundraising goal. We're confident we're going to exceed our fundraising goal, and we're going to make sure that some kids in need in our community are able to get a good breakfast. And
now that is a great cause. I have to admit that 100%. But where will this actually be taking place out of? Where will these kids go and get the food? So
what we have, that's why we partnered with the people that we partnered with. So this infrastructure is largely already in place. We have Algoma Family Services helps the school boards throughout the year run their nutrition programs. So they have the expertise. But our DSABs run all of our community hubs. And they're often in touch through the Ontario Works programs with families that could use that extra hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the distribution through our community hubs, which are right across the city, and the DSAB is going to manage that and make sure the food gets out to the appropriate people. And we are also going to do our best to make sure that all of the city-run facilities that children go to throughout the summer, that they actually have those good breakfast materials available too, so that kids can get a healthy breakfast. So we're going to use infrastructure already in place. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. Right. We went to the people who know what they're doing, and we said, what do you need to distribute this to distribute? And they said, all we need is the money to buy the food. And that's what this program's about.
Well, hopefully that's an easy enough fix, because I think that is, like you say, that big gap in the summer is something that does need to get filled.
Yeah.
Andy, on to yourself.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for being here. The NAFTA steel tariffs, full-blown trade thing is in the works. Is there a plan B in case this lasts long-term? You've been in touch with the Mayor of Hamilton, and is there a strategy in case this lasts, let's say, for 8 months or 10 months?
Yeah, so you called them the NAFTA steel tariffs, right. and they're not NAFTA steel tariffs, but they are related to NAFTA, and I'll tell you how. The United States is levying the tariffs under a national security provision, so that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Right? Particularly if you're going to levy them against Canada, because we are not in any way, shape, or form a national security threat. Matter of fact, some of the plate that we make at Algoma has historically been used in American military vehicles to keep, their men and women safe. So it's really an irrational position. But where you're calling them the NAFTA steel tariffs is likely because what we're caught up in all of the NAFTA negotiations and the NAFTA posturing. So, you know, obviously the United States wants a deal on NAFTA. Canada wants a deal on NAFTA. Mexico wants a deal on NAFTA. But there's some sticking points on that deal right now. And as they're working that out, in and amongst that, it seems that to potentially pressure Canada into enter into a deal, the United States started levying tariffs. And they chose steel and aluminum. I want to speak to that quickly because they're raising issues with different things that we trade back and forth. But on steel trade, we have a very balanced and integrated relationship. About $12 billion of steel crosses the border. $6 billion going one way, $6 billion going the other. So that's balanced. But more importantly, what we need to recognize is that American steel represents 6% Canadian steel represents 6% of the American steel market. So 6% of the American steel market. But American steel represents 30% of the Canadian steel market. So what they're doing here is they're disrupting a very balanced and fair trade in steel. And they're disrupting it under the guise of national security, but when really it's tied to NAFTA. So your specific question was, what's the plan? Obviously, the hope and the plan is to not see this thing go long term, right? The hope and the plan is to push back so that it ends shortly. Because the longer it goes, the more detrimental it's going to be for Algoma. Now, I've been in constant touch with Algoma's CEO, and him and I have been speaking weekly about this. Obviously, if it goes long term, it's going to be more challenging. If we get it resolved in the short term, Algoma will it'll come through this just fine. But what we have to do then is in the short term push to have maybe more sensible positions prevail. And you see some American legislators now, particularly in the Senate, you see Senator Flake and Senator Corker that are talking about trying to bring legislation to the floor to put these, to curtail the president's power to levy these tariffs and to bring it to an end. But I think what Canada did was really smart. So what Canada did was Canada targeted very specific things that are going to have a political effect on the president. So the president won his presidency in specific parts of the country. And what it seems to me that the Canadian government did, and I think intelligently, is target products coming from those parts of the American Midwest and the parts of the country, the swing states that supported Trump. And I think that's what we have to do, because frankly, this is entirely a political issue.
Oh, definitely.
So the goal is to not meet this long term. Now, if it goes long term, frankly, we're going to need support. We're going to need support from our provincial government. We're going to need support from our federal government. And I'm confident, based on the conversations I've had, that support will be there.
Just a quick...
Andy, I do have to interrupt, as we are going to take a quick break. So, I mean, I just want to hear as bad as you guys do what Andy's got to say next. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
All right. Yeah, he's got that thing.
Yeah.
Would be the solution to these tariffs of steel and aluminum?
Well, I think the federal government, the Prime Minister, has been pretty clear that they don't want a separate deal, that NAFTA is a tripartite deal, and they want to continue as a tripartite deal. So that's really a discussion that the President and the Prime Minister have to have, and it's really the Prime Minister and the federal government who's going to make that decision. Frankly, I'd like to see, obviously, them wrap NAFTA up and the tariffs be removed as soon as possible, but it doesn't seem that Canada is willing to go to just a two-country deal on NAFTA. They're maintaining they want a three-country deal. As far as more meetings with the Prime Minister, again, that's something you'd have to put to our MP. I can tell you this. I can tell you that the Prime Minister has been incredibly supportive, and the MP and I speak at least once a week about this. So they're there. They have met with the senior leadership of our steel companies. They've had an opportunity to meet with the Prime Minister. I've talked to them about that. They were very pleased with how that went. And everybody feels like we're getting the support that we need from the federal government.
And I'd just like to add one more thing. I think our Foreign Minister, Cristian Freeland, has done an amazing job on very tough circumstances.
I would agree with you there. I think she's done a pretty exceptional job.
Alex?
For sure. So we'll take it back to the Sault level again. And when it comes to the Smart Cities initiative that we did apply for, unfortunately, we weren't one of the cities selected. What do you think was going well for you guys, and where do you think it kind of fell off the tracks?
So actually, I don't think it fell off the tracks. This is the federal government put $270 million on the table, three $90 million rounds. So we got in the very first round. Not all communities did. We're going to go in for the second round and take another swing at it. But in the end, they only selected 20 communities to move on. 14 municipalities, I think, and 6 First Nations communities. So there were very few spots available. There was a couple $50 million prizes, and I think there were a couple $10 million prizes, and there were a number of $5 million prizes.
I believe it was 5, 10, and 50 as well. Yeah.
We put in for the $10 million prize. So we were competing with whatever other communities would have put in for the $10 million prize.
Do we know how many people actually did submit an application for that?
We do. And you know what? I don't recall the number off the top of my head, but it was a pretty competitive group. But when you look at actually the 20 groups that got to move on, and you look at their submissions, and we're going through them now to compare them to ours to see where we were strong and where we could improve. We were really close to the wheelhouse. Like we were close, and we had a good submission. Now, one of the things that we took away from the submission, because we put together a team to look at it, was that we need to do some work in the municipality and here in Sault Ste. Marie. We have a bit of an antiquated IT infrastructure at the city, and we're actually examining that right now. And I think you'll see when that report's done, I think you'll see something come to council to say, look, this is what we have to do to upgrade our IT infrastructure. There's a whole bunch of things that you want to see happen. There's a whole bunch of things that council wants to see happen, data and information that council asks for, things the community's asking for, like apps and ways to kind of deal with the city online. We don't really have right now the IT infrastructure at the city to make those things happen, but we're doing the work to get to that. And I think once we've raised our game at the municipality, we'll be in a better position to put together, a more compelling smart city submission, because we'll have a better foundation to do that. So one of the things that the group is looking at doing is the group is now sitting down and actually developing a smart city plan for the city. So it's not necessarily a smart city submission for round 2. We're going to keep on working on that. But in addition to that, we're going to put a larger, broader smart city plan together for the city, so we can look at all of our infrastructure and what we can do as a community to become more innovative and forward-looking. So I think a lot of positive has come out of this application, and I'm confident that when we put in for round 2, we will have a great bid.
Well, when do those second rounds actually go out?
We do not. They have not announced that yet.
Okay.
They're going to get the first round a little farther down the chain here. They're going to kind of assess it, see how it goes, and then they're going to publish the dates for the next round.
Well, when we do know when that is, I'm sure we'll have our friend here, Cristian Provenzano, back in the hot seat. But for now, he's going to be taking off, and we're going to be throwing it to a break. But I wouldn't call this a high-profile show for no reason. So right after the break, we'll be joined by Matt Shoemaker.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And welcome back to the second half of our high-profile edition of Civic Affairs. So we're with Matt Shoemaker right now, Councillor of Ward 3, and we're going to let Andy take it away with the first hard-hitting question.
Matt, thanks very much for coming in to do the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's a household name in Sault Ste. Marie now. It's wonderful. Matt, given today's world, would you consider bringing forth a resolution and a motion, since you're the king of the resolutions? The idea of, this is my idea that I came up with, and looking at it, installing metal detectors at all entrances to protect the employees and public while at City Hall. The fact that the City Council and City Hall is still a soft target.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary. I think we want City Hall to be an inviting place, a place where everybody feels, like they're safe, like they can come in without having to go through these big security checks. Of course, that can change day to day. If we see that there's an issue or that there's a threat, obviously we'll have to address it. But, my preference would be that we don't have to do that. We don't have to go to that step and sort of, make it, more institutional-like than it is. We want people to want to come there.
Right, and exactly, once you take that step, then it opens up other issues, and you might get a lot of fallout of that.
Yeah, everybody thinks, I think the consensus would be, if you asked people, that they'd prefer not to have to use them at the airport and at courthouse and wherever, but such is the way of the world today, and hopefully we don't get to that point at City Hall.
But it was just a sign of the times, but luckily we are a small city and we don't have the issues of a Toronto and Vancouver, and we'll keep it that way.
Yes, absolutely. So now, taking a look at Phonom, they want to have municipalities increase HST by 1%. For infrastructure costs and the such of that. So Are you in favor of that? Do you have any comments on it? Are you really against it? Or what kind of are your thoughts? I'll let you explain.
Yeah, no, I don't agree that we should be raising taxes on folks who are already tapped out. So the provincial government, as you know, the federal government lowered the GST about 7-8 years ago now, a couple percent, and it really provided, relief to folks who are purchasing goods, goods and services. So to, undo that change and to re-up it and to pay for infrastructure. Obviously, there's a need for infrastructure spending, but there's got to be a better way to do it than increasing taxes on folks. They should look at what we're spending money on now and see if there is any savings that can be found and redirected to infrastructure, because I think that people are tapped out.
Fair enough. And Andy?
Yeah, I think you're right, Matt. It's just, where do you draw the line? Because you got to look at the economic conditions and overall, and I think council spending is pretty good and the budget is good, so that's great answer. Transparency, accountability, and the new integrity commissioner is coming fast in 2019. In your opinion, will this change your ways on how you conduct and manage your duties as councillor of Ward 3?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to answer the question so I can highlight some of the things I've done over the last 4 years.
No problem.
I have posted my voting record online for the last 4 years. I've posted my my council salary online for the last 4 years, and I've posted every council expense that I've incurred online for the last 4 years. So I've already conducted myself, I think, in an open and transparent manner. Obviously, there's some new rules, like you have to send in writing your conflicts of interests. I've declared them at the beginning of every meeting verbally, but now you have to send them in writing as well as declare them verbally. So, I'm going to comply, obviously, as everyone's going to, with the new requirements, but I think I have, and all of our council has been a very good proponent of transparency. We even, in fact, video record our closed sessions of council. That was a recommendation that I brought forward. So it's, I think we operate in a very accountable and transparent way.
We have to go to a break? Yeah, okay.
You may have preluded to that. Yes, Andy is right.
problem.
We are going to take a quick break, but once again, I will let him finish. I won't cut him off. So stay tuned. We got more of Andy, Matt, and myself right after this. I'll apologize for cutting you off the second time this show, but please continue.
No problem, Alex. It's Alex and Andy and Matt. I just wanted to ask you, Matt, a quick follow-up on the Code of Conduct. Do you think there's improvement in the current city Code of Conduct to improve that once this new integrity, accountability, and transparency kicks in 2019?
Yeah, so there was a review of the Code of Conduct this term. There was also changes mandated by the province. So obviously the changes that were mandated by the province have all been put into our new Code of Conduct, but we reviewed it as a municipality. Myself, the mayor, Councillor Myers, Councillor Hollingsworth were on a committee, as well as the city clerk and the city solicitor, to see how we could improve it. And we looked at ones from London and Guelph and Waterloo and elsewhere in the province, similar sized cities, and we improved it. We have better reporting procedures. We aren't charging people to file a code of conduct complaint. Some municipalities are. We have obviously the integrity commissioner that's going to be able to investigate complaints, as well as provide advice to councillors so that they can avoid getting into situations that might result in complaints. So overall, I think we looked across the board. We saw what was being done that was right, what was being done that could use some improvement, and we've made the right changes.
I've seen, Alex, just one quick comment.
Yeah,
Matt's
absolutely.
right on top of the conflict of interest. The council meetings I've been to, he's right on it, and some councillors forget to leave the council chambers, but Matt makes it happen every time.
For sure. Now, Matt, in Sudbury, there's a 4% hotel tax. If that was to be implemented in the Sault, what kind of fallout from that, what kind of effects would come if that was implemented in the Sault?
So we've got already a destination marketing fee, and it raises across all the hotels somewhere in the range of $700,000 to $800,000 a year. And I don't know what that is as a percentage, excuse me. But I think we are reviewing that right now because the province has said you must have a system in place that collects these fees in this way. And so we're trying to make it so that our current system fits within the provincial rules, and I don't think we're looking to raise significantly more from the hotels than they're already paying. So I don't know what it'll end up as percentage-wise, but I think we'll generally be in the ballpark of what we're currently raising, unless there's agreement that it should be a different amount between the municipalities and the hotels and the tourism industry that's participating. I think that's a discussion that can be had, and I understand it'll be coming back to us as council this fall to make a decision on what amount it'll be, what the stakeholders want, and what the province is mandating. So there's some discussion to be had on that. Sudbury's already made their decision. Ours is coming this fall.
All right, and only time will tell with
Only
that
time
then.
will
Exactly. Andy?
Yeah, Matt, well, let's talk about a little bit about Sault Transit. I'm hearing a little pushback since the new schedule went into effect June 3rd. What can you update our viewers as to why it happened and why we are where we are with the Sault Transit schedule?
Yeah, so Sault Transit reviewed all their routes. It was about a 6 or 8 month process. They started either late last year. Yeah, it must have been late last year in 2017, and they took ridership counts. They reviewed the GIS mapping of all of our existing routes, and they determined where there was a need, where there was service that wasn't being used, where there was a need for service that wasn't being provided, and we've come up with new routes. So obviously, folks were dependent on the old routes, and this has resulted in some change that has affected people's routine. So I think that there will be some growing pains with this. I think there's room for improvement. The staff at Sault Transit is open to recommendations on, well, you moved this to this corner when it should be at this other corner. They're open to that. They've assured us every time we've sent them emails, they've explained why a change was made, or if it can be, not undone, but perhaps tweaked in a way that will satisfy a various business owner or various resident. And I think that that's what we want to hear as council. We're not there to decide what the bus route's going to be. We just want to make sure that it's working for a great number of people.
Great. Have you heard much feedback in the residents of Ward 3 as far as the Sault Transit schedule? Or?
Yeah, I have had some complaints, frankly, that the bus stop used to be here and now it's been moved and it's affecting either a business or a resident. And so those are the types of things that we've asked our staff to look into, see if they can create a little micro-transit program to get people where they need to go. But it's still in the process, and I think over the next month, 2-3 months, they'll be looking at the complaints that have come in and whether or not they can be fixed.
Okay, great. Alex.
Well, that is it for another episode of Civic Affairs. For my guests, Matt and Cristian, and my colleague here, Andy, we thank you immensely for sticking with ONNtv for your coverage here, and we thank you, and we'll see you again next week.